So what the FX was Sony thinking with the FX2, Connor?
We don't know, man. We do not know.
Sony just released the FX2 that goes in between the FX1 and the FX3. Just kidding. There's not an FX1.
Maybe that's the camera we actually want. This is the sequel, I guess, to the FX3. It's got some really amazing features, some really interesting new additions to hardware, but then it also seems to just completely miss the mark in other aspects. The internet's upset. The internet's always upset, but the internet's upset again.
So the FX2, I will say, I want to point out something that I love about this camera. It's that EVF. I love the fact that they included an EVF on an FX body. The body is very similar to the FX3, if you're not familiar with it. It was a version of the very popular A7S III in a more cinema-focused body. They called it a cinema camera, but when that camera first came out, there was actually nothing really different about it other than the body. The software was still basically the same as the Sony A7S III, which is a hybrid photo video camera. And they touted it as this big cinema camera with literally nothing different about it except the frame itself. Well, not long after that, they did have a massive firmware update, giving it shutter angle, some anamorphic support, no open gate, none of the things that we really love Lumix for, and many other camera companies that offer many of the things that we could talk about today. But it did make that camera much more viable as a cinema tool. And I remember when it first came out, I did say, who's going to buy this thing? The A7S III is very similar price. I think it was even cheaper, and it had an EVF and all this stuff. Well, I was dead wrong, because that camera is insanely popular. And I think it really just has something to do with the fact that it's called a cinema camera. It kind of looks cool. You know, what do you think, Connor? You've used it. Did you even own one at a time?
I never owned one. It's actually one of the most recommended cameras, at least that I recommend, that people purchase. A good friend, mutual friend of ours, Malachi, I recommended that he get the FX3. He really enjoyed that camera. And I think I was in the same camp with the A7S III versus the FX3. I was like, it doesn't have an EVF and it's the exact same internals. It doesn't make any sense. But the body design actually was really great. The, chopped off top really made it nice for cages, the quarter 20s in it. It was nice. Would it have been nice to have an EVF? Absolutely. And that's kind of what the FX2 is. Maybe that was the feedback Sony was listening to with this whole debacle. They're like, okay, for the FX2, we're going to do an EVF, but we have to get around the fact that we need it to be flat on the top. Yes. And that's how they came up with this idea, which is, it's very... There goes my light. It's very similar to a Handycam. Yeah.
So yes, this new EVF that they've added to the FX line, I hope they continue to use it in future FX series. But it's really cool for video shooters, especially because it gives you the ability to really bright outside. You can use the EVF when the screen is too dim. But it also doesn't just stay fixed in a straight across stance. I'm saying all this really weird, but it actually flips up. You can look down, which is really cool, and not cool just for video, but it's actually amazing for photographers as well. I could see this, even though it's a cinema camera, being popular with photographers because the sensor in it is so good for photography, and it's got this kind of variable, adjustable EVF, which so many street photographers especially prefer to shoot that way, kind of looking down. That way, when you're taking candid shots on the streets, it's much more kind of discreet because you're just kind of looking down.
Yeah, I think that this is a great addition. I don't think anyone's really complaining about the fact that this EVF is on the camera. I would love to see it in future cameras, and all that is fine. It's if you've used like a C100, C200, or just any camcorder from forever ago, it's the same kind of thing. It's just really making a comeback more than anything. This is not a new idea, although being flat on the top is a new idea. So that's actually nice, again, for if you're going to put this in a cage and things like that. The thing that gets people all bent out of shape with this camera, I think, and maybe you disagree, Dave, we'll have a conversation, is that it's $2,700, which isn't, the worst price. It's not the best price, but it's more or less the internals of an A7C2. We're having the same story. It's the internals
Mhm.
of the A7C2
Or the
and,
A7 IV,
or the
which
A7
is
IV
even older. Yeah.
in a different body. And I didn't look at A7 IV, but A7C2, I was looking at eBay. I'm seeing them for like $1,700.
Mhm.
So $1,000 cheaper, you can get the exact same internals. So then you're just like, is the body upgrade worth $1,000? And I think that's where people are getting, just looking at it in a vacuum of just Sony. Like, we're not including any other cameras in this conversation at the moment. It's like,
Mhm.
what do we think about that?
Yeah, the A7, and by the way, the A7 IVs are selling for around $1,800 to $2,000, a little bit more than the A7C. But yeah, same sensor in there. There are a few minor upgrades. The AI autofocus is in the FX2, the same kind of amazing autofocus system that they've got on all their top end cameras right now. So that's new. The A7 IV doesn't have that. I guess, does the A7C have that though? The A7C2
I
have that?
think it does. Yeah.
So that's why that's a more fair comparison, because if you're comparing it to the A7 IV, the A7C2 had some of these newer features.
Mhm.
So you're right in comparing it, because it's essentially just a newer body. Yeah, I don't know. Is it worth it? I don't know. I was talking about this to Connor before we started recording, but I do think there's some creators out there, or let's just call them filmmakers,
Oh,
who are completely unaware of anything that's not in the cinema line at all, because they're just not bothered with it. Any type of hybrid photography camera to them is like just not even on their radar. I have a friend named Chris Haggerty who's like a really experienced DP.
mhm.
He is so cinema brain. That's all he thinks about. The only stuff that he knows about is cinema related. And when I talked to him about hybrid cameras, he's like, "Oh wow, I didn't even know that was a thing." Like, I told him about the ARRI log in the Lumix cameras. He hadn't even heard about it, and he
Wow.
shoots on ARRI. He actually owns an Alexa now. I don't know if you knew that,
I didn't know that. That's
by the way.
awesome.
So this type of camera will come up in conversation with him and other directors, with rental houses. And so I think it's weird because we can't really like put our finger on it as YouTubers or people on the internet,
Mhm.
but there is sort of like a kind of a, I don't know, like a culture around this line of cameras and the Sony Cinema series of cameras. It kind of fits in with the Venice, which is a really high end, really well established in Hollywood camera. And so even though this sensor has been around for a while, to some people this may be the first time they've ever seen it, first time they've ever even heard of it. And I
Yeah.
will say, as a when I was doing reviews with Indie Mogul, is when A7S3 came out and when the A7 IV came out. So I had reviewed all those cameras when I was doing camera gear review stuff. I loved that A7 IV sensor. There was some limitations to it, and we could talk about it here,
Yep.
but I actually preferred the color science on that camera. They had a richer, more saturated, poppy kind of look compared to the A7S. And because it's a 6K sensor downsampling to 4K, it was a really sharp, crisp image. When you put the A7 IV image next to an A7S3 or FX3 image, it was much, much sharper. It's a better photo camera as well because of that. The higher megapixels just give it much more room to work with as a photography camera. And with that little EVF, it makes it a fun little photography camera. Though there are some limitations with that. It's like some sort of like the curtain or something. It's not a full standard mechanical shutter that you would get in an A7 IV or an
Yeah.
A7C2.
That doesn't make sense to me. I don't actually understand the tech, because people are like, in my head, it's one or the other. It's like, is it mechanical or is it electronic?
I
And they're
guess
like, oh, it's like kind of both, but I'm like, okay, is there something there or not?
yes, there is a physical curtain that goes up and down, but it's
Okay.
not like the mechanical shutters that we see in like proper photography cameras. But it's not just nothing like the FX30, which isn't the FX30 like just a completely nothing, that it's just electronic
Yeah, I
shutter
think
only.
so. But I mean, again, with these cinema bodies, you kind of don't need it. Like, I know you're
Yeah.
saying you can take photos with it, but it's like, I mean, you really can, but are you really going to? Like, if you're buying
Yeah.
a cinema camera, which, we did the air quotes for the FX3 as well, because it's like, is it a cinema camera? Well, you can shoot movies on it. That's for sure. We understand that. You can do that with an iPhone too. But like, it doesn't have a lot of the cinema things that we're used to when you just are talking about other cinema cameras like SDI at the time,
Yeah.
anamorphic stuff at the time, shutter angle, things like that, waveforms. Those are the things that made a camera a cinema camera. The Sony FX2 didn't have it. It just had quarter 20s on the body. That was cool. I feel like we're going to have the same conversation with this camera. I also think you're right. It's a great sensor, and people are going to create amazing things with it. There's actually Sony already put out something. It's on Instagram. They did it with some indigenous folks, and it looked really cool. And like it looks great. So like, no one is saying that like you shouldn't buy this camera necessarily, and you can't create interesting things with it, because you totally can. But what we do is we talk about cameras in the terms of the market, what else is available, and this is just kind of the conversation we're having. So if you love the FX2, by all means, run with it, make really awesome stuff. Full support on that. You're not dumb for buying it. It's just, in our opinions, which they're opinions, it doesn't really, it's kind of a confusing. It could maybe be better with firmware, just like the FX3. I don't know. It's just a goofy camera.
Let's take a look at some of the specs here. I'm sharing my screen if you're watching the video. Like you said, it's at $26.98. So if you're just buying things brand new from the website, not looking at used options, because I think you could probably find a used FX3 probably close to this price. Is this just kind of a nice in-betweener between the FX30, which is a cheaper APS-C version of this, and the higher end, I guess you could say, FX3, though this actually has better autofocus and the EVF. So you could argue that it's actually better in some cases.
And it's a 6K sensor.
And it's a 6K sensor, but there's limitations to this sensor.
Let's just talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go to that. 4K 60 and 120 is available, but only through the crop mode. But you can do 1080p full frame, 60 and slow-mo. So, maybe this is Sony's best 1080p camera ever made. But the rolling shutter is an issue that some people have talked about before. Rolling shutter is when you see the jello effect in the footage. This has fairly bad rolling shutter, but it's been well known within the A7 IV line and the A7C2 line of cameras. Mm-hmm. So if you've ever done any research on those cameras, or if you want to check that out, it's going to be the exact same. There's no change between the rolling shutter performance of this versus an A7 IV. Gerald Undone talks about it in his video, kind of a controversial conversation on his channel. So if you want to go check out his video and read the comments, you can be involved in all the drama there. But yeah, and then of course, as we've talked a lot about in the last couple of videos with the Lumix systems, basically giving us everything we've wanted in hybrid video cameras, like waveforms, like the anamorphic modes, we are missing a lot of those things in this camera. So Connor, what are some of the things that I feel like are almost like baseline for a hybrid video camera, especially something that's calling itself a cinema camera in 2025? Give us a list of the things that are missing here that you kind of wish they had added.
So here's the thing. This has also been kind of a thing on the internet. People are like, oh, all these content creators, they've been talking about Lumix. They must be getting paid by Lumix. I wish. I have asked. They've said no. And not to be like an ambassador or anything, but I was like, oh, it'd be cool to do like some sponsored content with Lumix because I love them so much. It's just because I really like their cameras. I was never a Lumix guy before. Then the S5 II came out, and it's just like Lumix gave us these features that now feel like, because I've been using them, like they should be a standard, but it's just not being adopted by the rest of the camera community. So the things I'm talking about, which you've heard us say these things too many times, Open Gate. It just means that, like, Open Gate, for those who don't know, it just basically means that we're filming to the entire 3x2 sensor. So when you take a photo, you are essentially shooting an Open Gate photo. Mm-hmm. It shoots the whole 3x2 sensor. Typically, with a lot of these cameras, you're shooting in 16:9, or you're shooting in 17:9, which is like a Cinema 4K or something along those lines. So you're losing the top and bottom of your frame. And it's really great to shoot that and have the top and bottom of your frame, because that allows you to, one, just recompose in post-production, because sometimes when you're filming things, you slightly miss the mark, and it's nice to just have that flexibility in your frame. Let's just be honest. OpenGate isn't just useful for that. It's also useful if you're shooting with anamorphics.
Mm-hmm.
Anamorphic has been making a really big resurgence lately, especially with a lot of these more affordable anamorphics that have come out. Like we're seeing sub $1,000 lenses for anamorphics, which is wild. Just for anyone who doesn't know, they're typically ridiculously expensive. And if you're shooting with OpenGate, you get a higher image again. And so when you stretch it,
Mm-hmm.
you're not left with such a narrow, super ultra wide frame. You actually have a pretty usable frame. So if you want to learn about anamorphics, go watch Cam Mackey. I'm not an expert on it by any means, but OpenGate helps with that. Another thing on that note that the FX2 isn't giving us is multiple different anamorphic de-squeeze options. So when you film with them, it's really hard to monitor anamorphic lenses unless you have de-squeeze. So you need a monitor on top of your camera to be able to do that. But with the FX2, you're able to de-squeeze 2x and 1.3. But that's it for some reason. I don't understand that, because with other cameras, other cinema cameras, but also with Lumix, you're able to do 1.5, 1.8, 1.6 maybe. There's a whole bunch of them in there. And it's very strange that we're not getting that. And then the last thing that I can remember that we're not getting in this camera, the FX2, which is, again, claiming to be a cinema camera, is waveforms. Is waveforms
and false colors?
False color.
False color and waveforms too.
False color and waveforms. So false color is really great. It basically makes your image look all funny, but more or less, if it's green, it like makes all your colors look weird. But if it's green, then it's exposed at like that median, which is what you kind of want your skin tones to be. If it's pink, it's like the highlights of your skin tone. And then red would be overexposed. Purple would be underexposed. It's really useful. And then waveforms is the number system to be able to like actually view your graph and be like, oh, this is overexposed, underexposed.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah,
it's very, very useful.
It's my preferred way of judging exposure is waveforms and false color too. But I don't use false colors much. But yeah, I mean, OpenGate is the biggest one. I think it's kind of the biggest topic for Sony to kind of address in the future. And I don't know if they're like holding it back because this is technically a camera that sits below the FX3 in terms of price point. And, you know, I feel like it should be more of an adjacent camera. It's like, do you want super good low light or do you want a 6K sensor? You pick, you know. But I think it does technically sit below it in a way. So maybe they didn't want to put it in there because then it would make the other ones look bad. So maybe we're having to wait until just like whatever the next generation of the A7S is going to be, the A7S 4, which again, the S line has kind of been the main video centric line from Sony, though they all now are kind of at the same level. They just have, do you want high resolution? Do you want global shutter? Do you want this? Do you want that? Like they kind of mostly are all the same at this point. It's just you pick and choose what you like the most. But yeah, I don't know. I think OpenGate is the main thing I would love to see. And the way that Lumix has done it with the really high 6K, 10-bit recording options, but then this new MP4 Lite mode that's like a 3.3K H.265, really compressed, really efficient codec that you can easily edit on any computer, on any phone. That has been really great too. I've actually shot a lot of YouTube content on that because I just don't care about all bits and all this stuff. I bake in my color. I never color grade anything. Yeah. So 3.3K OpenGate is fantastic because you get that vertical crop and it's just so useful. I did a shoot, like a real actual shoot for my cousins, Connor, who are photographers recently.
They're awesome.
And they post on Instagram all the time. Their whole business is run on Instagram. But the project that I was filming for, they're going to deliver in 16:9, but I know because they're Instagram influencers, they will repurpose this footage for Instagram later. And so by shooting OpenGate, I was I explained to them, I was like, hey, this is pretty cool because all this raw footage, if there's any frame that you want to use on Instagram as a photo or as a story, you're going to be able to crop it and have a pretty well perfectly framed image for both. So
Yeah.
it is seriously like it is the word game changer is valid. At first I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but now that I've used it so much, um, and in this modern day and age that we kind of live in, with where we kind of need to play in both worlds of vertical and horizontal, it's kind of like, why isn't everybody doing this? Like Canon isn't doing it either.
No, they're not. I don't actually, it doesn't make sense to me. It extra doesn't make sense to me because Sony makes all these sensors.
Yeah.
So Sony is making these sensors that are in these Lumix cameras that we're raving about. And so by all means, theoretically, like I don't understand how Lumix is utilizing Sony technology better than Sony, in my opinion. That's my opinion.
Mhm.
But I do firmly stand by that. Like, I would rather have the Lumix S9 over this camera personally, even with a lack of EVF and no mechanical shutter, although this one is some weird hybrid thing, but still,
Yeah.
because of the open gate, because of the anamorphic features, it's that useful. And I do think that, I feel like I said this before in the other podcast, but I'll reiterate it. I feel like I feel like it's something that if you haven't used it, you don't understand why you want it.
Mhm.
Because it's like, I just frame all my stuff normal. Why do I need to have that extra headroom? Just shoot it correctly.
Yeah.
But it's like, again, once you have it and once you realize the power of open gate, and then also, again, if you get into anamorphics, but that's a side note, it's just, it really is that useful.
Well, back to the FX2 in terms of like the body, I've got some pictures pulled up here. You can see that EVF and how it kind of sits outside of the body in a nice way. So if you have glasses, if you know you got a big nose or something, it's actually going to be really useful. But you can flip the thing up too. I don't think they have a picture. Yeah, there you go. Here's a good picture of, if you're watching the video, of a guy using it, and
Yeah.
the little eyepiece goes up. It's smart, but
It's good design.
it is very close to the hot shoe. So if you're going to be putting anything on there, even like a Rode Wireless Go or even a DJI mic, you're now kind of locked in at the super flat version. You won't be able to flip it up, but I think that's a fair compromise to make because it's such a tiny little body.
Well, does it have the quarter 20s? It does, right?
Yeah. It's got all the quarter 20s that you've seen on the FX2 or the FX3 rather.
Theoretically, then you could mount your mic somewhere else as long as you're not needing it to be attached in there directly. So yeah.
And one thing that I love that they added that is new is 2 quarter 20 threads on the bottom.
That's nice.
So I don't know why they haven't done the tripod mounting, the extra mounting point before on any of these other cinema cameras, but I'm glad to see it here because that just gives you more stability when you're putting it on a tripod plate. I'm sure many of you guys have done that before and it wiggles on the tripod plate. The screen is the same as before, which is actually a pretty low resolution screen apparently compared to the higher end Sony bodies. It's got just lower resolution on the screen. It's also not super bright. It's glossy. So, but thankfully this model does have the EVF. I would assume that is a cost saving thing and a literally, like, they've done their research. They've realized everybody who uses this has a monitor. So like at the end of the day, although I wouldn't, because I love shooting.
Neither would I.
Down. I love shooting that way, but maybe we're more of the hybrid shooter type of person.
Yeah.
The actual quote unquote cinema people, they're rigging it up on a thing with a monitor, So, but this format, this photo that I've got of the guy looking through the eyepiece, this is really, I do think, a really wonderful run and gun documentary style setup. That's been kind of the problem with only having a monitor. If you want to go super stripped down, handheld, run and gun, guerrilla style, is what they say. You kind of need like an EVF or something. So having that is actually really cool. I hope to see that in other cameras.
I will say, just looking at the body, I haven't held it. So depending on how the grip feels, this could be one of the more comfortable ways to film as this run and gun thing like you were talking about.
Yeah.
It really does depend on that grip. Sony grips have been a little bit goofy for me. I have heard
the same. Nothing's changed here.
I have heard that the newer higher end Sonys, like the
Mm-hmm.
and the A9 III has a much more comfortable
Yes.
grip. I literally have never held those cameras. They're
Yeah,
out of my price bracket.
they've got more ergonomics to it.
But yeah,
The FX2 does not have the wonderful flippy outy flip around screen, the one that
no,
does everything. It does, the up, down, back, forth, left, right, flip around.
we love
So
that.
we love that. It's in all the high end stuff. If you're going to throw everything in the cinema camera and charge more for it, I'd love to see that there. But again, maybe it's just based on, well, most people use a monitor, so we're not going to bother with it.
Yeah.
You can use the XLR adapter. I would recommend, if you're needing something like that, to buy it with the camera, because it's you save a little bit of money when you bundle it together.
Mm-hmm.
But here's another one of the problems with it. There is no 32-bit float recording option in camera. Unlike the Lumix, which has, when you use their little XLR module, it then gives you the ability to, plug your XLR mics into it, and you get 32-bit float recording internally. Again, this is kind of a newer thing that's been happening. We've been seeing this kind of on all the devices over the last 4 years or so, and it's been a game changer. I mean, obviously love using 32-bit float. If you're not familiar, it's kind of like raw audio. Really has saved my butt in a lot of situations where audio would normally have been clipped, and I'm able to then, inside of Final Cut, it's fully natively supported. I think it's natively supported in Resolve, is it not?
I think it
Connor?
is, yeah.
So it's everywhere. Premiere. If it's too loud, you just pull your levels down, and all that detail is still there. It's wonderful. Do you need to have it? I guess you don't. People have had it for, well, of course you don't. People have not had it for decades, but
It's real nice.
but gosh darn it, it's really nice. And I feel like if it can fit inside of a tiny little DJI mic mini, it can fit in this. So why are they not giving that to us? I don't know.
So the price on this camera again is $27. So again, if you're looking at it in the vacuum of, it's like, okay, we're only looking at Sony's lineup, it totally makes sense. It's an obvious price almost, because it's,
Yeah.
What's the FX30 go for? It's like 17.
Mm-hmm.
And then another $1,000 and you have the FX2, and then another ish $1,000, then you have the FX3.
Yep.
Right. So it's like it's just kind of obvious. The problem is when you start looking at other things that exist. For example, we like to talk about Lumix, but how about Nikon? Nikon has the Z6 III, which is a 6K 60 raw internal capable camera for
it's $2,000. Holy moly!
I think it was $2,500 new. It's $2,000 right now.
On B&H, actually, it's $400 off. Holy
it's
moly!
It's a crazy good price.
So this. Wait, hold on. Is this the same sensor as that one, do you think?
It's the same sensor that's in the Lumix S1 II.
Oh, wow.
I don't believe it's the same sensor that is in. I could be wrong.
It's probably a newer.
This is a newer sensor than the Sony
FX2.
one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I guess it's all Sony sensors, but I mean, yeah, the FX2. But it's interesting. So so let's just say it's the brand new price because it's on sale right now. I think that they put it on sale because the S1 II came out and they had the same sensors, so that was a competitive move. Smart move.
You can get one used for $19.91. That's crazy. Yeah.
But how about this? What is a Lumix what's it called? The
S5 II?
S5 II go for right now?
I mean, brand new, they're 19, but you can find them for under 15. Getting one used for 13.
Yeah. So right now, used, we're looking at $1,373. I'm seeing new $1,600 on sale.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is also a 6K. It's roughly the same age sensor. So we're looking at that might be the same sensor. Is it?
No, it's not. It's the A7 III.
Well, we're looking at the a 6K capable 4K 60 with a crop, but this camera gives you the open gate, and it gives you the anamorphic modes, and it gives you all this amazing features. So
that's what I'm shooting on right now. This exact camera, and this camera is so good, it's boring. It's a really boring camera because it does everything totally great. Like, I've used it on so many shoots now. I have an S5 II, an S5 IIX, and the S9. Yep. All three of them share the exact same sensor. All three of them are essentially the exact same. with the exception of the S9 being a smaller body with some limitations with the size.
Yeah.
But these things are just workhorses. They have a fan. Like, this doesn't have the word cinema camera on it, but it might as well be. Like, it literally has more features
yeah.
and more capability as a cinema camera than the FX2 that we just looked at.
So I think that's where a lot of the issue is coming in from, right? It's like, if again, in the vacuum of Sony, it's fine, but the market is so full of amazing options, and really Lumix has come out of nowhere in the last 2 years, and they've really been crushing it. It's like, I mean, even the S2E that just got announced, that Lumix doing.
Oh my gosh, good point.
It's the one $2,500, but it's raw internal capable, and it's going to have ARRILOG C3 coming to it soon.
That's a really good point. This camera is cheaper than the FX2, and this is truly a cinema machine in comparison.
So I think that's where a lot of the confusion is. It's a sequel, but it's almost like a prequel to the FX3. It has some good features with the EVF thing, but then it has some weirdness. It's I don't know. That's my opinion on it. I think that Sony, unfortunately, has become the new Canon. They've become very complacent, would be the way I would put it. And then also, more than anything, they're protecting their higher end cameras. That's really what I think it is, because if they would just stick all these things in there that we want, then it's like, well, why would you buy an FX 6? I guess for internal ND, but still, they're just doing these things to protect their higher end lineup, my opinion.
I think that's one of the things that, if we're on that topic of internal ND, that's one of the things I would love to see them do with the next iteration of these FX lines, is including built-in ND. We've kind of like, everybody's been asking for something like that in a hybrid body, and I think it's possible with electronic ND, and that's technology that Sony has used before in their cinema cameras. It's not the filtration like I had a Canon C70 for years and loved it, but every time I'd change the ND, you could literally see a filter moving up and down. It feels very archaic. Like, whatever they're doing, they're physically moving a filter up and down. The electronic ND is just a screen in front of the sensor, and they're basically putting like jolts of electricity into it, adjusting the strength of this chemical or whatever it is. It's amazing science, whatever they've figured out. That is totally doable to put in front of it. Maybe there's some limitations with the IBIS. So maybe that's part of the issue. But
I've talked to some camera engineers, and I've had conversations with multiple different companies' engineers. So I won't say specifically which one in this case, but I have been informed, at least with one company, that it comes down to and it's a size issue. So it's like either IBIS or ND, and they've always chose IBIS.
Okay. Yeah,
so
I mean,
and that's kind of a hard
I guess I would
trade-off.
also choose that. I would, but maybe they do a variant that you could choose. I mean, again, maybe I'm being too ridiculous to say that, but it's like, what if you had a FX3 Mark II and then you have a FX3 Mark II ND?
Well, we say it's ridiculous, but I'll bring Lumix back in the chat. How are we doing? GH5 and GH5S.
Yeah. They got rid of the IBIS on that.
They got rid of the IBIS, and it was a very popular camera. Now, they didn't give us internal ND, but
and now that you're bringing that up, it's true that a lot of cinematographers do not like IBIS. They don't want it. They actually prefer not to have it, because they believe, and I agree with them, that for film, it creates things that are out of their control. Any type of movement of the sensor, even when it is tuned for cinema, like, they're not in control of that. They'd rather it be on a gimbal. They'd rather it be on a dolly, because they are controlling that thing. So it would make sense for them to do maybe a variant without it, but I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting. Do you think that this camera, though, could be really a fun niche little photography camera? Because it's actually kind of like a rangefinder, and Sony doesn't really have, I guess they have the A7C too. I guess that's the argument. It's like, if you just want a small rangefinder camera, just get that one.
Yeah.
For photography.
Yeah. No, just literally get that. It's cheaper.
Or the A7CR, right? That, or right?
Yeah. I don't actually know what the A7CR.
A7CR specifically, yeah, it's 2900.
So it probably used, it's probably roughly the same price.
That's a 61 megapixel sensor. That's the A7R5 sensor, I think. So,
which I love that camera, and that sensor is a great camera when I had it.
So yeah, if you want really rich color, really great photography, I guess there is no argument that like that's a way better photography tool. Because I was thinking like, oh, that's an interesting, fun little kind of photography niche camera because you got that little EVF that's, it's adjustable. So if that's a big deal to you to have the ability to flip that thing up all the way up to a full 90 degrees, then maybe it is, especially if you lean more towards video as your primary, but you do like photography kind of as a secondary. Could be interesting. I don't know anything really beyond what we talked about with the shutter. I don't know if that's going to be an issue. I saw in Jordan Drake's review on Petapixel, he mentioned that type of shutter can create some weird bokeh effects at certain shutter speeds, but I don't really know what he means by that. I'll have to ask him sometime. But
does he mean positive effects?
No, negative. No, it's like okay. It creates an artifact with bokeh in a certain way, but I don't really know what he's talking about there. But
okay,
yeah, I think overall it's a curious camera, that's for sure. I don't know what the FX they were thinking, but I do like the overall body. I would love to see them maybe swap the sensor out. It's like, hey, they've got a pretty dialed body now with the two screw points on the bottom. The flippy EVF thing seems cool. Just filter that out with different sensors, newer sensors. And I think ultimately they need to treat the cinema line as a cinema camera, which means giving us features like false color, waveforms, 32-bit float recording options, open gate. And then that really does create a true differentiator from the hybrid cameras like the A7R or the A7S III. Let those cameras be the hybrids without all these super high pro features. And then like, I don't care if you're going to, Lumix seems to give us everything on all the cameras. If Sony doesn't want to do that and they want to put the cinema stuff on the cinema line and the normal stuff on the normal line, I'm fine with that. But right now they're not giving us all the cinema features that are truly competitive. And I would love to see them do that in the future.
Yeah. You just said it pretty great there. We're in 2025 now. It's a different market. We want different things now in our cameras, and Sony needs to play the game. And I just feel like they haven't been playing the game. And we were hoping this would be the camera where they'd step up, but in my opinion, they didn't.